call you Ali, like Ali.
Ali, Ali.
It's scary. Arabic is scary.
It's fine. It's good.
All right, we are live.
So
I'm gonna get
guttural.
the YouTube. Oh, we are.
Yeah.
Hi,
Ali.
everybody.
See,
Yeah,
that's
Ali.
scary.
Ali. So we're saying my name in Arabic, so it's the letter is Ain, so it comes somewhere out of
Ooh,
the.
look at you, mashallah.
Yeah, mashallah. Yeah. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Secular Jihadists in the Middle East. This is our second Ask Me Anything episode. Or, sorry, Ask Us Anything. How selfish.
Yeah, it's not all about you.
It's all about me. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, ask us anything. So, we're happy to be here. And we're happy to have you join in and ask us questions. My name is Ali Rizvi. I am the author of The Atheist Muslim, A Journey from Religion to Reason. With me is Yasmin Mohammed, and Yasmin Mohammed is author of Confessions of an Ex-Muslim, soon to be released, actually a lot sooner than we thought, and she's going to talk about that right now. Soon, and so I've said soon a whole lot. Okay, I gotta stop listening to myself. And we also have Armin Navabi, the great Armin Navabi, the Iranian ex-Islamist who founded Atheist Republic, the largest online platform for atheists, including ex-Muslims worldwide. And finally, we have Faisal Said Al-Matar, but he is unfortunately not with. Oh, okay, no, that sounds like he died. He is. He will be joining us very, very soon. He had something to do, so he's going to be coming in. So if you have questions for him, feel free to ask, and when he comes in, we'll throw them all at him at once. So before we start, I wanted to, have invite Yasmin to talk about a new project that she's starting that is actually just amazing and very, very inspirational. It's such a simple, beautiful idea. And I'm just surprised that none of us thought about it before, but she started it and it's going really well. So Yas, go for it. Tell us about what you're doing.
All right. So I've started a campaign for a program that I'm calling Free Hearts, Free Minds. So I'm always getting emails and messages constantly from Muslims who are struggling with questioning their faith, or ex-Muslims that are dealing with this new life and all of these feelings of emptiness now that they don't know what their world was, and now they don't know what their world is going to be, and they're sort of stuck in between and all that stuff. And I was trying to find ways of helping all of these people. And the first thing you do is throw money at a problem, right? So I'm like, okay, so let's try and get you out of there. Let's try and get you support. But that turned out to not be so helpful, because a lot of times these people were dealing with issues of just loneliness and suicidal thoughts and things like that. And they were in no position to start looking for a job or trying to find an apartment, or things like just logistical things like that. They were just too stressed out. And so I went through this whole long process of figuring out, how can I help everybody without actually helping everybody one by one, because I obviously can't do that. And I don't have the capacity to help everybody. Like the messages, they'll send me a message and I'll respond, and then they'll write again and again and again. And I felt like I didn't have the authority to be responding to them. And I felt like, what if I'm saying the wrong thing? Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, long story short, I went through this whole process. And in the end, I decided, okay, I think the best thing to do is to teach a man to fish, basically. So allow these ex-Muslims, to give them tools so that they're able to, forge their own destinies, build their own lives, stand on their own 2 feet. And then I thought of myself and the process that I went through. And for me, it was going through a lot of therapy is what helped me. And so I thought, okay, well, this is, what I can do for them. Obviously, I'm not a therapist. I had no idea. So then I went through the process of trying to find therapists that speak different languages. And then once I overcame that hurdle, the issue then was the ex-Muslim experience is so incredibly distinct, and there are so many moving parts. There was no way that I was going to be able to convey all of this to any counselors. But then like a miracle from above, I met Jimmy. Jimmy was an activist that actually spoke at the Maryam Namazi secular conference. He was on the same panel as Armin, and he is an ex-Muslim, and he is a wellness practitioner. He's a counselor. This is what he does for a living. So he was thinking of doing this, and I was thinking of doing this, and stars collided, and so now we're working together. So we already have a whole list of people from Pakistan, from the UAE, from Egypt, from Iraq, from all over. Gratefully, all of these people right now speak English, so they're going to connect with Jimmy via Skype, and the cost of their support, Jimmy's slashed his cost in half, and the cost for their support is all covered by you generous, wonderful human beings that have been supporting both the GoFundMe account and the Patreon account. And so now we're gonna be able to facilitate you guys to help all of these ex-Muslims stuck in Muslim majority countries, because here in the West we can go for support through government-funded programs, but obviously in Muslim countries, you can't go to a counselor and start to tell them, I'm an ex-Muslim, because you could end up getting yourself arrested, or, you know, all sorts of horrible things could happen to you. So I'm very, very happy that I'm going to be able to work with Jimmy on this project, and we're really looking forward to helping a lot of people. So if you're listening to this and you're an ex-Muslim from the Muslim majority world, then you can please go to my website, confessionsofanexmuslim.com, and you can find information there on how to contact me, and we'll get you the support you need. And also, if you're an ex-Muslim wellness practitioner, then please contact me as well, because this is way too many people than Jimmy's going to be able to handle all on his own. So I'm very grateful that he's starting out with me, but we're going to need more people.
Can
eventually.
I?
Very long-winded. Yes.
We actually, at Atheist Republic, we have a lot of application for people that are suffering a lot of, you know, they're alone, they're being demonized by their friends or their government or their parents. Some of them actually being kicked out. Some of them are suicidal. And we have too many applications to deal with. We're going through them as fast as we can, but do you mind if we send some of them your way?
Not at all, Armin. Yeah, please do. That's exactly what we're here for. So if they're in a Western country where they can get support, then I'm going to ask for them to maybe find support in their own cities or countries that they're in. But our main focus is for people that have no other opportunities. So if they're in a Muslim majority country where they legitimately cannot speak to anybody, sometimes people can't even speak to their own spouses about what they're feeling, then those are the people that we are our first priority.
Okay, that's great.
And just one thing, and I don't know if that, but is there potential to expand this? Like maybe have a platform where people, if they want to tell their stories, we can, if there's a website where we can publish their things, or, you know, even bring in later on, eventually, you know, see if we can hook them up with even legal services for people who are trying to escape persecution. And I mean, to me, the beauty of this idea is how much potential it has, you know, to expand in all the different directions it can go in, and the way that it's started right now, I think it's just amazing. It's fantastic.
And I thank you both for your support, because you both have been very generous with supporting the program, and so I wanted to thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you for starting it. That's great. So let's get to the questions. Armin, what do we have?
All right. If you see in the chat group, I sent you the 3 questions so far.
Can't wait to read the Atheist Muslim. That's one of the first.
Is it?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I hope I don't disappoint. There is a new review of the Atheist Muslim on the Patheos website, and it's actually one of the reasons that I liked it especially is it's written by somebody who's a progressive, and you know, it pretty much hits all of the points that I deliberately wanted to try and get across in the book. So I was glad that they picked up on it. So I did tweet it at some point, and I put it on my Facebook. So if you guys can check that out, please check that out.
And somebody commented about my ironing board. Isn't it beautiful?
All right.
Yeah.
Did Majid Nawaz change your mind about reform in Islam?
No.
No.
Okay,
not
so
mine.
let's start with that one.
No, that's a simple no. I want to get to this more medical.
Simple no. As we said in the podcast, we disagree with the route, but we agree with the destination. Right, guys?
Right.
Do you think we all
And
agree on
I
that?
think all of us are at different places with that too.
The
But we
thing
all
is, you're
do
not going
agree
to
that
get
he's
to
an
the
important
destination
voice.
if you pick
For
a wrong
sure.
path.
Mhm.
Yeah, we agree with the destination, but if you have a map that doesn't work, then you're not going to get to that destination.
And actually, I want to say I do want to answer that question. I don't. It's not a simple no for me. I think when it comes to the reinterpretation of scripture and all of that stuff, I'm more inclined to agree with Armin than I am with Majid. But Majid's definition of reform, when he talks about Muslim reform, including ex-Muslims, including apostates, including liberal Muslims, secular Muslims, conservative Muslims, everybody coming in and having a place where they can converse openly and speak openly without threat. If that is the definition of reform,
okay, here's the thing. Those are separate things. There are things that Majid does that are very valuable. One of them is bringing attention to ex-Muslim issues. Another thing is fighting for freedom of speech. Another thing is for fighting for secularism. And these things are great. They're not Islamic reform. They are great. And he's doing a very good job at it. No, they're not. The Islamic reform, by definition, means changing Islam. Okay.
I guess it wasn't a simple answer, hey?
Yeah, I guess it wasn't.
I'm just saying that you can't just rebrand something and include things that are actually good. But the thing is that I can admire him for those things. The fact that he's giving a platform to ex-Muslims and bringing attention to their persecution, that's one thing, and he's doing a very good job at that. And thank you for that. That's separate from reforming Islam. If you want to say, well, part of reforming Islam is leaving Islam, no. Leaving Islam, well, if he's actually supporting leaving Islam, well, thank you, I appreciate that. But reforming Islam, changing Islam to something that is not Islam, is not reforming Islam. It's abandoning Islam. Okay.
I agree with you on that, Armin. But I'm just saying that I think that and one thing I said in an interview recently is also that I'm not convinced by Islamic reform, but I do think Muslim reform is something we can do.
Right. I completely agree with that.
I know that those are universal things, but within the Muslim community, we don't really have those spaces where those conversations happen.
We do. I give Muslims more credit because when I talk to them, they understand where we're coming from.
So anywho,
we're talking about countries and societies where it's penalized.
I just want to say Muslim reform is different because people change, right? And people are influenced not by Islam, but by Islam and many other things. Islam can change. I mean, if you want to define Islam as a book that is dependent on the Quran, that's, as long as that link is there, that's a shitty ideology. Muslims can change. Islam will always be shitty. Anyways, next question.
No, I totally agree with you because it's always going to go back to the default. Sam Harris talked about that too.
Yeah, so it's so the first question here is what can be done to help the Rohingya Muslims? So for those who don't know, I don't think there are many people who don't know, but the Rohingya Muslims it's actually not just Muslims, it's mostly Muslims, and it's also some Hindus as well. It's a community right now in Myanmar, which used to be called Burma, and right now they're being very viciously attacked by the Myanmar army. The most recent episode happened when they actually, in reaction, a few of them went and attacked some of the soldiers in the Myanmar army at a border checkpoint, and the retaliation was just absolutely insane. So there are babies being killed, there are people being burned alive, there are gang rapes, there are horrible things happening to this community, and a lot of the reaction I've seen with people who are just sort of blanketly anti-Islam and anti-Muslim, and again, we criticize Islam as much as anybody else. Like, nobody here is a huge Islam fan, but what I've seen is people actually saying that the army is right in doing this because the Muslims are, whenever they go somewhere, they're like a cancer, and even when their babies are being killed, even when their people are being burned alive and their women are being gang raped, we should somehow look at them as a jihadist insurgency, and this is just not the case. And the thing that complicates it is that the Myanmar, the army and the people who are doing the persecution are actually Buddhists, which is traditionally not the kind of religion that is known for this kind of thing. So what can we do to help them? I think we should do everything we can to help them. And I cannot understand. It's amazing to me that there are people who actually think that this is okay because those Muslims are somehow, all of them are jihadists, which they're clearly not. And I have friends who live in that area. I actually know journalists in that area who have been telling me, I mean, they're pretty unequivocal on how horrendous this situation is. And final point, Nobel Peace Prize winner Aung San, I can't pronounce her name ever. Can someone say it? Suki? Well, she's the de facto leader of Myanmar at this time, and she's been notably silent about it, and the UN has called her out on it. Malala Yousafzai, another Nobel Prize winner, has called her out on it. And so far, it seems she's still been silent. So there's a very serious crisis going on over there. And I think that if we dismiss that, and if we say that those Rohingya Muslims should just be, well, they're Muslims, so it's fine, they were going to be jihadists anyway, so just go ahead and do whatever you want to them, I think that's a horrible, inhuman thing to say and to support. For anybody out there who's doing that, you're on the wrong side of history if you're thinking that way. And if we take that position, we damage our credibility. We will never be taken seriously as credible.
We're never going to support genocide regardless of who the people are that are being killed.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, we're not going to. That just goes absolutely against what we, I mean, the reason that a lot of us have problems with Islam and with Abrahamic religion in general is because of its complete blind spot on genocide. It doesn't care about genocide. There's genocide. The history of these religions has been littered with stories of genocide. That's one of the reasons we left it, the murder and the rape and the advocacy for all these horrible, horrible morals, as they say.
Yeah.
So we can't leave that. And
somebody is commenting against what you're saying, Ali. Ryan Spencer is saying, Ali, that's not true in the context, because he's saying Southeast Asian Buddhism has a long history of militancy. That's what the comment section.
That may be true, but I'm just talking about the when people think of religion, of Buddhism, the religion or the belief system, even if it's not a religion, is that they think of meditation, they think of the whole Zen thing, they think of monks that are just sort of they're ascetic and they're self-sacrificing and they give up worldly aims and goals, and they think of nonviolence. That's the association they have with it. So I'm sure there are, I mean, across all these religions, there are people who are obviously outliers.
This is one of those moments that you could tell who's being anti-Islam for actually disagreeing with people and who's being anti-Islam for other reasons. Because when you are saying that, you're looking at babies being burned alive and villages being, burned and people being, killed in masses, and people are saying, well, they're Muslim, then I'm shocked that so many people that I thought they weren't like that, and they're supporting this. And I could be like, okay, so I know now why you were against Islam. Your agenda was different than ours.
Somebody made a good point here. The Saudis and Iranians cry for Palestinians, but not for the Rohingya. Well, that's true too. There's definitely a double standard going on. I mean, Saudi Arabia is over there killing babies in Yemen. And then they'll complain.
To be fair, I'm not sure Iran would pass on any Muslim. I think Iran would take advantage of any Muslims being, maybe not as much as Palestine, but I would be surprised if this is not under news locally, all the time. What I would say though, when it's Muslim on Muslim, they don't take it seriously at all. For example, unless it's Shia, right? Like for example, in the Islamic world, I'm not seeing much attention on the Yemen crisis, and that's a huge, children are dying from starvation there, and Saudi Arabia has aid and food right at the, on the sea, and they're not letting it pass. And
Saudi Arabia is the one that's doing it.
Yeah, because if Muslims,
Saudi Arabia doesn't take any refugees. It's not. I mean, Saudi Arabia. That's just. And to Armin's point, actually, that's what I was going to say. I think that the example of the Rohingya is wrong. I think a lot of Muslim people and Muslim societies and communities and countries and governments are speaking out against a potential genocide in Myanmar, but when it comes to Muslim on Muslim violence, Darfur, 500,000 people died.
Mhm.
That's more than the entire Palestinian-Israeli conflict right from the beginning. 500,000 people, black Muslims, died at the hands of Omar al-Bashir and an Arab Muslim army. It was Muslim on Muslim, so nobody cared. Syria, right? 300,000 people. Assad
But
is
if a
killing.
Jew kills a Palestinian because he's defending himself,
Right. If Assad was Israeli or if Assad was a Jew, right, you would never hear the end of it. That's where the hypocrisy is. So, you know, and that is a whole separate issue. And I hope that doesn't take away from the horror that's happening with the Rohingya people. And
we denounce
unfortunately,
all of it. It's because
denounce all
humans are
of it.
humans, regardless of if they identify from what ethnicity or what religion, it doesn't matter. We're blanketly against genocide. It's kind of surprising that this ends up becoming
Right.
even a discussion point, to be honest.
And actually, Yas corrected me when I was saying, like, we need to defend Muslims when they're being attacked. And yes, like, why are you saying we need to defend Muslims? We need to defend humans in general when they're being attacked. So that's a very good point by Yas. Somebody, can I read the next question?
Please do.
Yeah, but there is one follow-up to my
Okay.
big rant at the beginning about my the program. Somebody was just asking, what are the odds? What's the potential? This is Ryan Spencer. What's the potential that people in those countries, that their messages might be tracked? This is something that ex-Muslims have to deal with all the time. So they're always changing their Twitter handles. They're always changing, you know, closing down account, opening up a new account. This is old news for us. We're all used to that. And
well, especially if you're in Iran, Saudi Arabia, or Pakistan, make sure you're using fake names on social media, and you're using proxy, or which yeah. So just make sure there's tons of YouTube videos on that to make sure you're safe. There's but make sure you're being careful with your identity. I know other Islamic countries are still not, you're still in danger, but especially those three, I think. Be extra careful. But somebody's asking about you guys yourself. Are you guys afraid about your safety at all? Katria asked, like, if you guys might be asked before, but do any of you fear for your life in this journey of reforming Islam? Well, first of all, we're not reforming Islam. We're asking people to leave Islam. And have any of these fears ever demotivated you from your goals?
Sorry, Yaz, you want to go
No,
ahead?
you go
Take
ahead.
this first. So I want to go back, and this is one story that I tell about this, and this involves Faisal, is when my friend Avijit Roy, who's a Bangladeshi blogger who actually lived in Atlanta, he was American. He went to Dhaka for a book fair, and he was hacked to death by Islamists or Islamic lunatics in the streets of Dhaka, just in public. After that happened, it was kind of close to home because I knew him, and he was American. He lived from here. He went there. He was a writer. So there were a lot of parallels. And at that time, I was writing my book. I was in the process of writing the manuscript, and I talked to Faisal about it, and we were very, very shaken. And at that point, that whole question came up: is like, is what we're doing, is it worth it? Should we really do it? And I had. Eventually we're going to have families, we have loved ones. Why can't we just enjoy our lives and get on with it? That thought didn't last more than a split second, because every time something like that happens, it doesn't demotivate me. It actually makes me double down, because that is exactly what we're trying to go against. The fact that this is the way that they silence us. So if we give in to it, we become victims of terrorism, because that is how terrorism works. Terrorism isn't just about killing people. It's not just about blowing people up or setting bombs. It's about silencing people. It's about scaring people. It's about making them too scared to speak out. And that's why I always say, I think more of us are victims of terrorism than we think. The New York Times and the BBC refused to, and they decided not to print the Charlie Hebdo cartoons that actually got so many people killed the morning after the attack. The morning after the attack, when they decided not to reprint those cartoons because they're scared of what would happen, they're not curbing terrorism. They have already become victims of it. So no, it doesn't demotivate me. We take security precautions. That's very, very important. Anytime, I mean, my wife got death threats for supporting a pro-secular candidate in Pakistan. Lots of them within, and we had to go and we had to report it. So we do take our security precautions here as much as we can, depending on where we are. But that's important. But it's not a demotivator. If anything, it encourages us even more. And at least for me, it makes me want to double down and go at it even harder. And now, as a father, I have a daughter now, and it's not just a matter of security for my daughter, and I'm concerned about that. But more than that, I'm concerned that she grows up in a world where she doesn't have to cower to these kinds of tactics. So, no, it doesn't demotivate me.
Yes.
Guys?
Go ahead.
No, that's okay. You can go. You move on to the next question.
All right. So, hey guys, do you feel that this atheist thing is turning into a religion?
How about you answer that one, Armin?
All right. So, I've taken courses on religion, and for something to be a religion, it needs two factors based on most definitions. It needs to have a supernatural belief and rituals. When I see people saying that this whole movement is turning into a religion, and I ask them for what makes it a religion, it's like, oh, you guys are getting together, organizing, and I'm like, well, by that definition, Amnesty International is a religion, the UN is a religion, the Greenpeace is a religion, human rights advocates are a religion. Every 4 person that gets together and agree on something and decide to do something become a religion. Does religion have a monopoly on people getting together and doing something together? Is that what we are calling a religion now? Because then I don't know what is not a religion. Any movement in history becomes a religion. So I don't understand why that accusation. Do you guys understand where that is coming from?
Yeah, I think I slightly disagree, and I think that the questioner is probably saying that there are a lot of atheists who are pretty much acting like religious people, like the ones we're talking about. Like there's some who are defending it, like, because the thing with atheism is that I usually associate it with rationality and reason and thinking in a level-headed way. But then you have people who have turned it into a very anti-Islam thing. Well, they're defending the genocide.
Well, actually, that's a
against
good thing
Rohingya.
that you got demystified. I mean, atheists getting together. One of the benefits of it that you realize that atheists have their share of their assholes, right?
They do.
So we don't have religion doesn't have a monopoly over movements and organization and getting stuff done, and they also don't have a monopoly over their share of assholes, and we have that. And I'm surprised that people expected that atheists are supposed to be all good people. Like, no, the only thing that we agree on is a lack of belief in God.
Well,
So,
one thing you said, Armin, a while ago was you said that you're both a humanist and an atheist, but you prefer the word atheist because you want to normalize it. I really like that, and one of the reasons I liked it is because, well, I have a bit of a broader definition of religion. I think of religion as something that can be made into a dogma. So
because religion is yeah, go on, sorry.
Yeah, no, I just want to. I know we might disagree on this, but this is where I'm coming from. I think that, for example, communism is something that really came out of the idea of the human being at the center of everything. So communism is essentially a form of humanism just gone wrong. So I think humanism can be dogmatic. Atheism, by definition, can never be dogmatic because it's a lack of belief in anything. So I actually prefer terms like atheist, and I think that should be normalized more. When it comes to all of these other things, all these other terms, I do identify as a humanist as well. But right. I prefer. I think that the word atheist is actually more non-committal. Even right. Whatever the connotation, by definition, it's non-committal. It doesn't commit to any kind of ideology or belief. All it is the lack of belief, unless you're presented with evidence in support of it. That's it.
And that's the same reason why I like the term ex-Muslim.
That's why it can't be dogmatic.
And yeah, ex-Muslim is also not committed to anything. It's just a lack of belief in Islam, and also it's and because leaving Islam is very demonized, even more compared to other atheists. So that's why I also like the term ex-Muslim a lot. But I also think that religion is a subcategory of dogma. Like, there are things that are dogmatic but not religion, but all religion is dogmatic. Anyways, So, yes, comments?
Oh, I was just going to continue what you were saying there by saying the same is true for ex-Muslims too,
Right.
because somebody in the comments said humans are social animals. I wish there were more secular events. And I totally agree with that. We are social animals and we do want to have our groups. And I think that's what's happening with the far right and the far left. And we got, Antifa, and we got the neo-Nazis, and we got everybody wants to make a group. And now there's like the New Center or the Classic Atheists or whatever. Like we all want to have a term and we all want to have like a club, atheists, ex-Muslims, whatever it is. And I think that that's like a human need. But I do agree with what you were saying about just because, like, I think ex-Muslim Muhammad Sayyid said it best, where he said, the only thing all ex-Muslims have in common is the fact that we all used to have something in common.
Right.
So, get 100 ex-Muslims in a room and there's an expectation that all these people are going to get along. Well, why? There's nothing about the fact that they used to have something in common that is going to somehow signify that they are going to have anything in common today, right?
Right.
So yeah, we do want that tribe, and I think that we all when we leave our religions, especially a religion like Islam, which is extremely tight knit, so it's closer to like Mormonism or Jehovah's Witness or Orthodox Jews or something like that. So when we leave it, it's very, very isolating. I mean, it's so lonely. It's so scary. I know both of you guys still have connections to your family, but a lot of ex-Muslims are in my boat where they had to cut ties completely. Most of them are, yeah, that's right, where they have to cut ties completely with friends, family, anybody that they knew. In my case, I had to change my name and move cities, so it's like you're completely isolated. So I understand that need of wanting to be with a group, but the danger with the group is groupthink, and the danger with tribes is tribalism. So I actually abhor that. It scares me. It gives me hives. I feel claustrophobic when I'm going to be when people want to identify me as part of a tribe, because I'm like, no, I'm not going back. I'm not going back there again, because I was there and I'm free, and I never want to be part of that again. I never want to be forced to say and act and be anything just because it's what is expected of the tribe.
Right. And actually, can I comment about that on something about in the comment section? One thing I like about atheism is because there's so much disagreement, it's less likely for it to become tribal, because it's possible for people to create movements and organizations and, without it becoming tribal. And an important part of a group not becoming tribal is people in it constantly questioning each other and disagreeing with each other. And because the atheists and ex-Muslims don't have any agreements with each other than the fact that they used to be something else, that's actually a strength, because they're constantly questioning each other's move. And a lot of people are also saying that, why would you define yourself as something that you're not? Like, I don't define myself as a non-golfer, so it doesn't make yourself to define yourself as a not believing in God. Like, what your whole definition is based on something that you're not. And like, my response to that is like, yeah, it doesn't make sense to define yourself as a non-golfer unless golfers got together and made golfing mandatory and made golfing the state sport and force everybody to play, wear golfing attire all the time, and made golfing tax-free and made golfing mandatory in education. Then at that point, everybody that doesn't want to play golf, it makes sense for them to get together and say that we are the non-golfers. At that point, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, one thing I don't hear a whole lot that I wish I did more, and we used to before, but it's somehow I don't hear it a lot, is just the idea of anti-theism. And I actually really like the idea of anti-theism because it unites people in a way that is sort of ideology agnostic. Like for instance, like if we take feminism, instead of saying, instead of being pro-feminism, if you're anti-misogyny or anti-patriarchy, whatever you want to call it, then you can have feminists from all stripes, from all kinds of different places, and they'll come together, and they have one thing in common, that they oppose, that they oppose inequality. Right? It's the same thing. If you're anti-religion, if you oppose dogma, and if you oppose the horrible values that religions teach, and you come together. You can be from a communist background, you can be from a capitalist background, you can be from anything, and you would you would have that one thing in common. It's more uniting than anything else, and then it also allows for diversity. So I think being against things that are bad is often a lot more powerful thing than trying to unite on something you're for, because you don't people don't always unite on it.
Uniting against racism, for example.
Right. Another thing I wanted to ask you guys, and Faisal's here. Faisal, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you guys a question from me to you, is that one of the criticisms that you get is people try to tell you, oh, you guys are organizing, why do you have to get together? I thought that's not atheism, that's more like religion. And I've actually spoken at the Ethical Humanist Society in Chicago. I'm doing a talk in Toronto here at Oasis soon. And these are sort of Sunday assembly type things where atheists sort of get together in a building. I mean, the building was actually sort of, I wouldn't say it was exactly church-like, but it had this nice auditorium. They had a lecture. I was a lecturer that day. They also conduct secular weddings. They do funeral services. So a lot of things that religion provides, the comfort thing that they talk about, that religion provides, a community that religion provides, that atheists don't have. These Sunday assembly type things are actually providing that for secular people. So that is actually a place for them to go. So it doesn't feel like all of that stuff has been stripped away from them. So I'm actually in support of it. And whenever I've talked to these groups, I've always had a very, very good experience. And I think it's fantastic. Do you guys think that that's a good idea?
Sure, whatever floats your boat, as long as you're not hurting other people. I don't care what you do. I almost joined. I was this close to joining Universalist church, actually.
Unitarian Universalist.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Unitarian Universalist. Because a friend of mine was like, "No,
atheists,
just
basically.
come." They're totally. There's tons of atheists there, and it's going to be all about potlucks and sing-alongs and yada yada. And I even met with the pastor. I think that's what she's called. She actually came to my house to talk to me because they were like so excited about having an ex-Muslim to be part of their group. But I didn't do it in the end because, well, first of all, I had such a need. I had a big empty space that I wanted to fill with this community.
That's the thing with these Sunday assemblies too.
And I felt like I needed to give that to my daughter more importantly, because for me, it's been a lot of years that I left Islam, so I was sort of over it. But I thought, that was a good thing about growing up, was that you always had friends around you. And so I thought, well, I want that for my daughter. But then I started to think, as with all tribes and as with any groups, there's always going to be an expectation, right? So I was afraid that, I love that there's lots of different people there, but I was afraid that that there would be expectations on my, you know what I mean? Like that people would start asking my daughter, but then why don't you believe in Jesus or something like that? Whereas, so I just thought, okay, I don't want to put her in that atmosphere, but then luckily I found you guys and you guys are my tribe, you're my family, you're my jihadis. And so it totally fulfilled me. And I no longer needed to have that.
No, we love you too.
I love
the
you
feeling's
too.
very mutual.
One thing I want to say, though, the problem with these things that are called churches or whatever, they try to copy religions to provide community Sundays. I think the issue is that I think religion for too long has gotten the monopoly over providing community and providing the social need that people have. And I think I want to just take that monopoly out from them. And they have a huge advantage because they're usually tax exempt. And I think that there should be, if there was more secular ways to provide those things, it would be more scientific. It would be mostly based on our psychological
needs. If everybody was secular, I would have joined, I think.
Yeah, and
it would secular, atheist, agnostic.
Yeah, and it would, let's say we have government, if there was no religion, I would think there would be if there was a need, it would be maybe government tax exempt organizations that have people that actually have degrees in knowing how this shit works, instead of having.
So can you mute while you munch on the potato chip?
Or share.
What religion does is it sells itself as this place. At least they provide community to people. Well, yeah, you're doing it. You're giving it to people that are using ancient texts, which is goat herder's guide to the galaxy to figure out what to tell people that say like, I'm gay, I'm confused, or like, well, I think you're going to go to hell, this is a sin.
There's
These
a
are-
negative side to it, right? It's
Yeah,
not all just
Who
happy.
came up with Goat Herder's Guide to the Galaxy? I love that.
I think I saw it in a meme or something.
Perfect.
It's fucking hilarious. Goat Herder's Guide to the Galaxy.
All right.
Well,
Douglas
can
Adams
I
would have loved it.
contribute to this nice conversation? Well, I mean, what, do you hear me, Yasmin?
I hear
Yeah,
you.
we
Yeah,
do.
I was just saying thank you to Sarah. I agree with her, Sarah Araqiya,
Oh,
because
hi.
she was saying that it's a good thing I said no to the UU church.
And we will invite her to the podcast. I think
Yeah, and
She
now she
also
has
said,
food
I'm
envy.
having food envy,
Yeah.
which is, we all did. I wanted to,
we all
it was
are.
so entertaining hearing him chew and the clinking of the bag and all that. I had to think for a few minutes. I was like, or a few seconds. I was like, should I tell him to mute it or should I not? But
Okay, well, you guys have your food fetish on me. What I was saying is that, like, I mean, I think that obviously it depends on some people's upbringing. I mean, I've actually, in a weird way, my first events, like the first atheist or event I've attended in America was organized by the Houston Oasis. So I used to live in Houston when I arrived here, and I've made like friends that like kind of had a community the moment I landed here. Like that happened like 3 days after I landed, and then I met Seth Andrews. So Seth Andrews was known as the thinking atheist, and I met him there, and we became friends as well. I think that humans. I mean, as someone who, I don't want to play identity politics, but like as someone who didn't grow up religious at all, is that I did find that there was something weird with like having like kind of a figure who's like kind of the priest or the imam, because I've hardly had respect for anybody. I mean, I don't even respect myself. So like the thing is like having some like authority figure like giving the speech as he's like some kind of like the head of the congregation it felt really weird to me, because I've never been used to that. Like the only time I've been to a mosque is like 3 times, twice to buy cigarettes and one to use the restroom. So like I like my experience with religious institutions has been very limited. I've been to churches a lot because I used to have many Christian friends in Iraq, so I used to go to weddings, and sometimes I go to the weddings. And the good thing about the weddings in Christian churches, they provide alcohol. So I'm like, fuck yeah. The thing is like there was no tequila, so they only had like wine and beer, which is like okay, I can get them at 7-Eleven. But anyway, like I think that like humans are social beings, and there is a tendency. I mean, except that people who are sociopaths, but like the people who are like generally people want to be part of.
Thank you for making that distinction. It was very important to point out that there are exceptions to this. There are some sociopaths.
I think they're called introverts, not sociopaths.
Some introverts.
Hashtag not all. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't want to discriminate against introverts of color in that regard. But what I was saying is that like humans are social. They want to be part of something. I think that there is an inclination for people to be part of a community, part of a family. And it really depends on how people feel, where they can be part of that family, part of that community. I mean, me personally, I think my community is at the bar. Like I have my own friend circles that I chill out with, that I consider to be my own friends and my own friend circles. Obviously, there are different levels of circles because I'm famous, right? So I have like many friends, and many people think of me as a friend. But like I have my close circle of people that I like to hang out with and everything. So, but at the same time, some people want to be like part of an identity. They want to be part of. I'm part of the humanist hub. I'm part of the Houston Oasis. I'm like, I want to be part of a family and a community that goes beyond their just like social circle. And I think that's completely fine. I mean, I think it's and I mean, I agree kind of with Armin, is that religion, and that's probably the only time I agree with Armin, is that religion has been able to provide this kind of like the only way you can be part of communities if you're religious. The same way morality has been hijacked by religion. It's like the term moral has been also like, even in Arabic there is the term is like يخاف Allah, right? Means like he's fearful of God. Like when you say that someone is fearful of God, means he's moral. Like so like the definition of being moral is really associated with being religious, and I obviously disagree with that fundamentally. So I think that something like community has been hijacked a lot by religious institutions for the most time, and for the mostly most of the people in the world are religious. So that's also, there's a correlation there. But I mean I do encourage. I mean, I'm speaking next November in Harvard, the Humanist Hub, and the Humanist Hub of Harvard is meant to be like kind of a equivalent to a Sunday assembly type, in which like people come in every Sunday, they have a talk about the positivity of life, how can we work together, and I think that's necessary. Like we need this kind of social life, knowing other people who believe in the same way we do. I think it's part of a human psyche.
I should probably announce this too, just really quick before we move on to the next question, is that, you mentioned Oasis. So I'm actually speaking at Toronto Oasis on November 5th. So if you're in the city, just look that up. Anyway, next.
What is Toronto? Is it part of Lahore?
Toronto is part of Lahore. So the two cities.
Well, actually, sometimes it feels like, I mean, when I was in Toronto, I mean, I've been to Toronto, I think 4 times so far. And there is a very big like Pakistani community there.
Yeah.
Like there's like lots of like I can see that's like there is. I mean, just like Dearborn. Like, I mean, Michigan is not all Arab, but you can feel an Arab sense to Dearborn. Like when you go to Dearborn, you see like shawarma, $2. Like you can see $2 shawarma.
All right, guys, let's get to the question.
Yeah, what is who's asking questions anymore?
All right. So the next question is, I was gonna make a comment about this whole atheist thing, but I think there's so much comment and not enough questions. So I'm gonna go into that.
They keep on talking about somebody. Who's she that they keep talking about?
I don't know.
They're talking about my mom.
Yeah. Okay. So should we start a BD? Should we start a BDS of Saudi Arabia? And I think they mean boycott, divestment, and sanctions. Should we make
BDS? How about BDSM though?
Should we should we make an organization that sponsors politicians that are anti-Saudi? Yeah, good luck with that. There's too much money.
We don't have control over that. The Saudi deals are being made way above the head of the typical consumer.
Yeah. Can I give you a radical opinion, guys? And that may sound very weird for me to say because I'm not radical like Armin, but I actually think, and that is a very controversial view that being discussed a lot within think tanks in Washington and everywhere, that I actually think Qatar is more dangerous than Saudi Arabia. I think that Islamists, the way that they wear suits, they seem very moderate, they seem very normal, they are much more accepted. Therefore, there is like less hate against people like Al Jazeera, right? Because they seem normal, because they can speak the double language. They can talk something in Arabic, something in English. The thing with the Wahhabis, and I'm not a fan at all, but with the way I see Wahhabis and Salafists, they are actually direct in their language. It's like they say, I hate the Jews. Like immediately, like you can know, like when you have a conversation with a Wahhabi or a Salafist, you can actually know exactly what they feel about everything. You know that they're not going to cheat you. They're not, you see what you get. It's like me, right? You see what you get.
I just want to say something for a moment
with Qatar
here, because
and
I think
Muslim Brotherhood, like they play every card. Like they hate the Shias, but they have a show loving the Shias, and or vice versa. They talk something in English, they talk something in Arabic. I am actually much more fearful of Qatar than I am of Saudi Arabia, and that's actually a radical opinion that many people don't share.
Qatar are also Wahhabi,
definitely
though.
radical.
No, well, I think that, I mean, Qatar
The
is more
difference,
like
what you're talking about, is
Brotherhood
Islamist versus jihadi. I think is the
no, Islamist versus
Qatar
Salafist.
is such an insignificant. Qatar is does fund problematic. You know that they fund.
Yeah, Qatar is horrible.
Yeah, but they are such a small player compared to Iran and Saudi Arabia.
They are very,
want to be a big player.
They are very influential, but relative to the monsters that are Saudi Arabia and Iran.
But I do agree with what Faisal is saying is actually true, in that people have already identified Saudi Arabia as, oh, those are the big bad guys. But Al Jazeera, they're so moderate. Muslim Brotherhood, ooh, they're so moderate. So people are still clueless about
Because
these
they're
groups.
anti-Saudi,
That's the only
right?
difference. They're the
Because
same
they're-
thing, but they just people aren't aware of them yet.
Because they're
That's
anti-Saudi. When the Muslim, when Al Jazeera, when AJ plus Al Jazeera makes a video criticizing Saudi Arabia, it goes viral, right?
Yeah.
Because it's always viewed the Islamists, the Muslim Brotherhood. No, they are the good guys because they fight against Saudi. See, they're not really extremists. So like this is
Qatar just wants to get away with being friends with fucking everybody, and that
hate
includes the
Saudi.
most horrible people, right? Except maybe the Saudi. Like, but they want to be friends with the Iranians and United States and Israel
be Saudi.
and Hamas and fucking Hezbollah. They want to be like, they want to have their hands to in every.
Yes,
But
they have
Yes,
little brother
if
syndrome.
If
That's
the
what
U.S.
Qatar
cuts
does.
ties, if it actually does cut ties with Saudi Arabia, or if it pisses off Saudi Arabia the wrong way, the stock market here, unemployment rates, like the whole thing will be a disaster.
Right.
That is a huge. That is the most significant. That's what makes Saudi Arabia so significant. Is that you just can't, no matter how horrible they are, how horrible they get, you just can't mess with them. If you mess with them, your economy is going to crash. So that's not the case with Qatar. I mean, I'm not saying Qatar isn't dangerous. Like all of that stuff with Al Jazeera and the propaganda and everything like that. That's true, but that's something that you can still counter without actual physical damage to your society.
And also Iran, actually. So Saudi Arabia has that leverage, the oil leverage, and the economical influence.
Saudi Arabia has been more dangerous than Iran when it comes to
Yeah,
that.
let me just make my point. So Saudi Arabia has that leverage. Iran recently has managed to get leverage over having so much tentacles everywhere in the Middle East that if you're not on their side,
Did you say testicles?
Tentacles.
No, tentacles. It's like all the anime porn you watch.
Right.
Oh, okay.
No, but Iran has managed to increase its leverage by saying that you can't defeat ISIS without me. You can't have peace in Iraq without me. I could cause shit in Lebanon, in Syria, in Yemen. You have to be on my side of the table. And what I'm saying is true or not, but that's the leverage that they're going for. So Saudi Arabia has that kind of leverage. Iran has a different kind of leverage. Qatar doesn't have that much leverage. I mean,
I'm sorry to tell you, they do.
Wait,
No, they do.
it does have leverage. Of course, it's going to be a nightmare for many countries if you cut ties with Qatar, but it's not as a fucking disaster as if you cut ties with Saudi Arabia.
I'm not advocating for cutting ties with Qatar. Is, by the way, you talked about oil. Qatar is #1 exporter of natural gas in the world. They are the highest exporter of natural gas. You want to talk about influence? Al Jazeera. Yasmin probably knows a lot about this as I do. Al Jazeera Arabic is the most viewed channel in the Arab world. Okay, in Al Jazeera Arabic, it's owned by the royal family of Qatar. Okay, and also Qatar is a major sponsor of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, Muslim Brotherhood everywhere. They are able. I mean, what is the difference between Islamists and jihadists? Islamists want to get Sharia law through politics, while jihadists want to use violence to achieve it. Qatar has been able to use that leverage as them being not Saudi, as to expand all over the region. They have one of the biggest influence in terms of, and agreed, you said so is Turkey. Yes, exactly. Both Turkey and Qatar are both Islamists who seem nice. They look nice. I mean, you have look at there is this show called Faisal Al-Qasim. It unfortunately it shares the same as my first name. You should look at this show called Faisal Al-Qasim, not Faisal. And he has a show called Al-Ittijah Al-Mu'akiz, means the opposite sides, okay? This is one of the most watched talk show in the Arab world. And in Faisal Al-Qasim's show, you can literally hear people talking about killing the Shias, all of this, but they don't have this like beards and the mustache and everything. No, they're like suited up, they have maybe small beard, they are able to communicate the same ideas that the Wahhabis are able to do because they look so bad. Nobody listens to them, or at least not a big people listen to them. But Qatar and through Al Jazeera Network and through many other places, they were able to normalize Islamism. They were able to push that sorry, like they have. There is an article I want to plug in, and he's a friend of mine who wrote it. It's called the Rise of the Violent Islamism, or the Violent Muslim Brotherhood, that was published on Hudson Institute by a guy called Mukhtar Awad. He's an Egyptian researcher. I think he's a graduate of Texas Austin, American University of Texas Austin, who talks about like the biggest influence of color is it's heavily ignored because we always see 9/11 there are like 9 people out of the 12 were Saudis, but we're forgetting how Qatar right now is really a very major player of why Islamism has spread across the region. Because they can communicate the same ideas Wahhabis do, but they look better, right? They are more suited up, but they say the same things, and they're a major reason why we have what we have right now.
The question is going back to the question, so we can wrap the question. So just so we can wrap it up, is this part of it is that should we have a boycott, divestment, and sanctions? I think if you want to boycott Saudi Arabia or Qatar, both, the one thing you can do is really focused on becoming energy independent. That's it. You become energy independent, and you make.
I honestly think the biggest fight that that's going to happen, Ali. I think that
I disagree, Ali, but go ahead.
I think
I'm not just talking about renewable energy. I'm also talking about like on the conservatives, like they're talking about fracking and all that stuff.
No, right. The thing is, like Saudi Arabia, look at their vision. Sorry to interrupt. Look at their vision for like 2020, in which they want to make this major investments in all of these American companies. They will always, I think Saudi Arabia will always be rich. Saudi Arabia will always be rich, and that is something we have to accept. What we have to deal with is compiling the ideology.
Yes, I actually agree with Faisal on this one. This is an ideological battle that we need to infiltrate. We need to go to, instead of playing defense, we need to go to fucking Saudi Arabia and secretly start spreading atheism.
The reason
I'm saying atheism.
Atheism.
I'm with the atheism thing, but the reason that they have that influence, the reason their ideology, they're able to market it so strongly, the reason that they have their tentacles into everything is because they're oil rich. You take away the oil rich, there's no entrepreneurship there. There's no educated masses there. There's no other industry that they have going except for this shit that is in the ground and underground. If you take that away from them, or if you just take that power away from them, then all of your ideological battles, everything else, right, is just secondary. It's a byproduct.
Can I respond to this question? Somebody posted that if you guys do anything that is based on the Quran anymore, and I think
so the question is, are there any customs from the Quran that you still practice?
Yeah, I actually want to say, to this day, even though
I get stopped at the customs quite a lot.
All right, can I answer this, please? Can I answer this?
Go ahead.
I have a few Qurans in my bookshelf, right? And to this day, still, I don't know why, but when I open the Quran, I can't, because I don't have wuzu on, which is the Islamic washing, right? You have to purify yourself, right? Without the wuzu, I still can't touch the words of God, the Arabic words of God.
That's bullshit. I'm going to come to your house and I'm going to make sure you just farted and then I'm going to make you touch that book. That is disgusting. You run Atheist Republic. I am appalled.
Okay, when I recognize that I'm doing it, I actually make myself touch it. Okay,
there you go.
But I'd be like, I kind of feel like I'm being electrified when I do actually though. But without noticing, when I'm actually just reading it, I notice that I make sure that my hands are touching the edges and not the words. But whenever I catch myself doing it, I'm like, what the fuck? And I actually, I'm touching
there
it.
You go.
It's like that thing of the Evil Dead.
But it's so weird to me that that's still ingrained in my head that I can't.
So I am embarrassed to admit, but now that you've admitted it, I will say this too. It's like, when I shower, there was this thing that I used to do when I was younger. Like I'd always do the ghusl, like it's in Shias. I don't know if it's Sunnis, but Armin, like when you wash your head one time, then you wash each side of your body, 1, 2, 3, right? Every time I shower, I used to do that every single day just to make sure I was pure at one point, and I still do that every time. I can't end a shower. When I end a shower, I'm like, okay, I'm done. Everything's done. Wash my head, 1, 2, 3. Each time I do that ritual before I get out. That's a
ghusl, right? So the first one is the wuzu. This is the wuzu, and what you're doing is the ghusl.
It's a ghusl, so it is the same thing. But I feel like if I don't do that, I feel like I'm still not fully showered. That's my closing ritual for the shower. It doesn't even have anything to do with the religion anymore. It's just comfortable for me to do it now.
You don't need to do that unless you had sex or something.
Well, I mean, I was 14. I was 14 when I did it, and I used to, you know,
I mean, come on, Ali is a married man. He no longer have sex. Anyway, so
Just for those kind of-
that's exactly what I want all of you guys to think. Thank you.
I'm like Armin like that too. Like if I find myself entering the bathroom with my right foot, or it's all for you guys, it was the washing. For me, it's right foot, left foot, and right hand, left hand.
Oh wow.
So
That's a Sunny thing, isn't it?
yes,
Mostly?
it's Sunny, I guess. I don't know.
Put your right
So-
hand. That
I think it's
Basically,
both. I think it's both.
90% of us. So anyway, so leaving the
told you
house,
guys
you
are
have
not-
to leave with the right foot. Going in the bathroom, you go in with the left foot. Putting your shoes on has to be right foot first. You never hand anything to somebody with your right hand. You have
That's
to, or sorry,
socialism.
with your left hand. You have to hand it to them with your right hand.
That's socialism.
All sorts of shit like that I purpose, like I don't think about it. It's just automatic. And so I have to stop myself and use my other hand because I'm like Armin. I don't want any control left in my brain.
Yeah,
mean,
I do think
for-
there's one
for
good
me-
ritual. Yeah, go ahead, Faisal.
Well, as I said, like I didn't grow up religious. I do like halal food.
Well, it's just food.
No, I mean it's just like I mean obviously because most Middle Eastern food is halal food because
Yes.
the majority of them are Muslims. It's just like having the halal stamp makes me like it more. I don't know why. It's just like
It's like Jewish girls. You like them more too.
Well,
All
that's-
the meat that Alishba and I get in this house, we all get it from the halal meat store. Just because
No,
those
that's fucked up.
butchers, like you don't really have other butchers. So when we do get meat, we always get our chicken and just a cleaned out, fresh, not off the shelf, the supermarket. It's just we get it all from there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so speaking of Jewish girls, some of them got radicalized and joined the IDF. But yeah, but
They
yeah,
all have to, don't they?
I mean, no. They were American before when I did them. But
Ah.
anyway, what I was saying is like I don't know, like yeah. I mean, I don't think I don't like. I mean, I celebrate the Eid obviously because my family are still practicing and all of that to some extent. It's I mean this kind of like the good stuff, right? The good stuff. Right? There is no.
So what Sarah
that's so
Al
triggering.
Rakia just wrote Takia confirmed. Hashtag Takia confirmed. That's the best
Yeah.
comment.
She's funny for a woman.
It's just funny, yeah.
Ouch. All right. So what would it take to ignite atheism in Iran or Saudi Arabia? We see
That's
an
a
upward.
great question.
We see an
Yeah,
upward
especially the word
spike.
ignite. That's
We see an upward
Love the word
spike
ignite.
in the West. What would have to happen to see measurable spike in these countries?
And
It's
a
already
related
happening.
question somebody asked, how can the Middle East example, Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, become a more tolerant region? Or so I
Mashallah.
think it's related questions.
Yes, those two questions are right. All right, you guys go.
Well, I think what we're doing hopefully is
Yeah,
helping
actually,
to
our
do that.
podcast is being downloaded in Saudi Arabia a lot,
Yeah,
and
and
Egypt,
Egypt and
yeah.
all around.
It's
So that's
already
good.
happening. It's
Yeah.
already
It's already
happening. So
happening. And there are a lot of people there that are doing podcasts and YouTube videos and talks and all sorts of stuff in Arabic that we're just not aware of.
Can I
If you
make a
watch-
plugin? Can I do a plugin and an ask as well for some of our Arab audience? So as you guys know, I have my organization right now. Thanks to a very generous funder, we're able to get started. So we have two major projects that are, I think, very important. One is translates English books and French that are related to secularism, human rights, critical thought to Arabic. So we're connecting with like some publishers here in the United States, and we're reaching out also to some places in Europe to see if we can get these legally done, in which we can push it around the Middle East. And what also we're trying to do is that that's actually a call for hire, by the way. We are looking for Arabic-speaking movie directors who can do movies or profiles of progressive Arab thinkers that we can produce and help producing, and we spread it around through our channels to the Middle East and around the Arab world. So if you are from the Arab world and you're listening to this and you have expertise in movie directing, documentary directing, etc., please contact me. This is something that we just actually happened today, that we have someone that is very interested in this and we want to make it happen. And like having this content of videos, short videos, spreading them on social media, make people question, make people debate, have a conversation about issues related to human rights, women's rights, etc. I think that will be a very helpful, not necessarily maybe not atheism, because I don't really care about that, but more about the human rights secular angle that I think
Well, talking about atheism, if another organization that is out there is Atheist Republic, and we have consulate.
Can you guys put your dicks away for a second?
No, I know, but other than
I know I will win, so I'm not gonna compete. Yeah,
that's okay. But we have consulates in every city, and what like you guys heard about what happened in Malaysia, right? And we have our consulates there. We have groups in Indonesia. And in Malaysia, Indonesia, these are countries that usually get ignored as Islamic countries. But Indonesia is one of the it's the largest Islamic countries in the world. So please, and we're doing that. And another, more importantly, is this podcast, okay? If you guys think that, this is the only ex-Muslim podcast that is out there, and this podcast is being downloaded. So if you guys want to support the rise of atheism or people leaving Islam in these countries, please consider supporting this podcast, The Secular Jihadists. Right?
And some people were talking about Sharif Gabir in the conversation.
Yes, before we go on, can I add some numbers to this just so that people have like all of the stuff that they're saying before we move on to the next question?
It wasn't the next question. I was just continuing. I was just saying Sharif Gabir He's in Germany. He's an Egyptian who makes really great YouTube videos.
Germany?
And he just released one. Yeah. He just released one. Not anymore. And he hasn't been for a long time, actually.
He's awesome.
And
what?
Yeah, he just released one today where he is showing, actually, it's Imam Tawhidi's argument that the ahadith are all fabricated. And he proves beyond a shadow of a doubt in a really hilarious way, but also so clear how all of these hadith are just fabricated.
That's actually I believe too.
It's fantastic because if you take the hadith away, obviously the Quran is still full of problems, but Sharia, for example, is based on the Quran and hadith. And if you can get people to question the hadith, and then they're going to have to deal with these existential these they're going to struggle with, oh my God, how can I not accept a hadith yet still be a Muslim, and then deal with that whole issue. And in fact, we had a guest on our podcast named Omar. Was it Omar? Or was it Muhammad? I think it was Muhammad from Syria, Al-Khadra. And
Muhammad from Jordan.
No, the one who said that he was a Quranist first.
Jordan. He was from
Jordan. Was that Muhammad
right?
from Jordan?
Yeah,
Muhammad al-Khadra convinced him, not any reform movement. That's what he said.
Yeah. So he started. So he was reading the hadith, and he realized this stuff is not true. So then he went to just the Quran, and then, but by then the questioning had already arose in his head. So I just think it's a nice stepping stone. Same reason why I support reform.
I slightly disagree with those approaches, but that could be a different topic.
Yeah. So I just wanted to.
Can I make a comment here? It's like there is a place for everyone. I mean, the reformers. I know, for example, like for you, Armin, your goal is atheism, and that's fine. I'm not gonna behead you for it. But for like just people, for example, let me tell you like personal story related to my dad. Is that like when somebody becomes a skeptic, right? When you're becoming a skeptic, you no longer take things on a.
That's not my goal, by the way.
Is that you're already subscribe as a result of the skepticism. You're already gonna not subscribe to any longer not fundamentalism at all. So you're gonna be very much more adaptive to supporting ex-Muslims, supporting the right for blasphemy, supporting the right for free speech. So like these reform movement or these kind of like Quranist, whatever, they can be actually a gateway for many amazing things, and that's most importantly fundamentalism.
Can I just clarify that first of all, when I say I disagree with the reform movement, that's not a demand for them to go away, right? And just like when people I disagree with the atheist movement, that's also another demand for them to go away, right? That's just a disagreement that I have with their methods, and that's okay to have. I think the reform leaders appreciate disagreements as well. So me disagreeing with their methods is not something that they are shy away from. Another thing is that what the atheist movement does more than anything else is acceptance of atheists before actually inviting people to atheism, right? And even after acceptance, that's the main purpose of the atheist movement, people accepting atheists, whatever religion they want to fucking have. Second thing is that if you invite people to atheism, is with their permission. We don't force these things on people. Is if they're curious to why you're atheist, and you answer them. Second of all, we count as a win. People, not that we don't. If somebody just becomes skeptical about their religion, that's a win for us. Not just leaving their religion. And another thing is that people just listening to us and seeing our points and agreeing that we have some points and accepting us, that's also a win for us as atheists.
That's actually that's
one comment. Like, think of the civil rights movement. It was not just only made by blacks for people to accept the blacks. It was also in alliances with many people who were white, who made acceptance of a black permissible.
That's what I'm saying.
Another example actually
is what I'm saying. What I'm suggesting is that what I do is I go to Muslims and we talk, and I don't change their opinion, but a lot of them say like, hey, I see why you're an atheist, and I haven't changed their opinions, right? So now this Muslim is my ally to go and say, you know what, maybe all atheists are not fucking evil, right? And that atheist,
I got it.
Right, go on.
Sorry. One thing, the Western Enlightenment, right? The thing that happened, it was actually brought about by a lot of atheists. So the atheism reform is actually brought about often by atheists. So what happens is you have atheists coming in saying, reject all this stuff, it's all bullshit, and then people kind of meet them halfway. So that the reform is actually something that is brought about by atheists, and in this case, deists and people like that. It's actually not. People didn't really go out.
That is kind of ahistorical when you're talking about Islam, right? For example, when you talk about the Mu'tazilites, who are one of the movements to actually
people that they disagree with, by the way,
no, but they weren't reformists.
It was not a result of atheism pushing them to be Quranist or to be
good. He's talking about the good kinds of reform.
Ali started out by saying Western ideas. So yeah, I don't think he was going as far back as the
Mu'tazilites is a whole different thing, because their philosophy wasn't really their whole thing was that the Quran cannot be the Quran must be created because the word of God cannot precede God himself, right?
Because the oneness of God would be
because which is not written by God.
They were never
the original reform movement.
Anyway, Ali, you were going to give some numbers and I interrupted you. I feel bad now.
No. I thought you were going to move to another question. That's why I asked you. Yeah,
no, go ahead and give us those numbers, please.
So the numbers I want to give in terms of this question about what's happening with atheism in Saudi Arabia. First of all, just subjectively, if you look at, or actually objectively, if you look at a lot of these Arabic TV shows, religious shows, they're talking about the rise of atheism and how it's a problem, it's corrupting it. Saudi Arabia has declared atheism a terrorist crime, which is a symptom of the rise of atheism. Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion, the Arabic version of it, which is also written by someone named Baghdadi. But anyway,
Bassem al-Baghdadi.
Bassem al-Baghdadi, and that has been downloaded.
Not all Baghdadis are bad people, including myself. Yeah.
That has been downloaded 10 million times in Saudi Arabia, and we're using Saudi Arabia as a benchmark here because that is the most conservative and the most, the Salafists and the craziest Muslim majority country that there is. So that's happened. Surveys, and I've said this many times before. The Gallup poll that showed that 19% of people in Saudi Arabia are non-religious, compared to 15% in Italy. 5% are confirmed atheists, which is pretty much the same percentage in the US. They say they're confirmed atheists. In a country of 20 million, that's 1 million people in Saudi Arabia, according to Gallup, a reputed polling agency who say they are confirmed atheists, 1 million people, and they're probably underreported. AK News, a Kurdish agency, right, polling agency, a news organization, polling agency, found that 7% of people in Iraq said that they're confirmed convinced atheists, not just non-religious, but convinced atheists. 7% of people in Iraq, that's another 2.5 million people. So in Saudi Arabia and Iraq alone, there are a total of 3.5 million people who have told polling agencies that they are confirmed atheists, not secularists, not reformists, atheists.
Atheists, right? Okay, not reformed Muslims.
We can get into that.
Just kidding.
There's a lot of those too, and these are, and we have every reason to believe that these numbers are underreported, right? Because this is not something that people want to admit, and so this is actually a huge thing. It's very, very significant, and it has.
I also talk about.
And I want to close on one thing from Mariam Namazi, who said that, and I made this quote before, that the internet is doing for the Muslim world what the printing press did for Christianity, and this stuff is spreading like wildfire. I mean, this podcast right now that's happening, we got to remember we're only a few decades from when Salman Rushdie was driven underground for 10 years for writing a book, and the book was burned everywhere. Now we're able to do this all over the place. So even though the risks of atheism in Muslim majority countries are very, very real, we should not downplay this progress. We should all be very, very encouraged.
Yes,
with the way that this is
compare
happening.
that to the number of reformed Muslims. I mean, I honestly haven't.
No, Armin. There are a lot of people who identify as non-religious and liberal religious.
Yeah, no, liberal Muslim is not the same thing as reformed Muslim. Okay, liberal Muslim. Let me finish this up. Okay, liberal Muslim is most Muslims that are just living their fucking lives. They don't care about Islam. I've lived in Iran. I met liberal Muslims. They don't give two shits about any fucking.
Armin Majid's the first person to agree with you that the reforms are a teeny tiny little group.
And I admire Majid for agreeing how weak that his movement is. So thank you, Majid. But what I'm suggesting is that reform, you can't count these Muslims that are not reading the Quran or the Hadith as part of the reform movement.
No.
These are people that are ignoring Islam, not people that are reforming Islam.
The reason I was giving these numbers.
You have to compare these atheists that are people that looked at this religion and said, fuck that, I'm not a Muslim anymore, compared to people that looked at the religion and either took it seriously, which is a lot, or people that looked at the religion and said, I think this means completely something else than what it actually says. And that number, that is the number of reform. And that is fringe. That is extremely fringe. In fact,
the reason that I quoted these numbers, the reason I was saying these numbers wasn't because of I wanted to do the reform versus atheists. I used atheists as a benchmark just to say that if these are the people who are saying they're confirmed atheists, imagine the number of people that are just saying they're non-religious. It's probably a lot more.
Wow.
So Hold on. I'm actually bolstering both your point, Armin, and also Faisal's point here, saying that like this whole idea, all of these approaches, I will take the reform people, I'll take the moderate people, I'll take the non-religious pro-secular people, I'll take the liberal people, I'll do that. The atheist is just a benchmark as a like such huge 3.5 million.
I'm not saying we should be atheists. That's I'm saying. Here's the thing. I'm saying the
really, Armin?
Yeah, if you haven't been listening,
so shocked right now.
You haven't been listening. That's why, man. You haven't been listening. I have been saying this for years. You haven't been listening. I'm saying the baby step.
They're watching cat videos.
I'm saying the baby step.
Put your dicks away, right?
I have been saying this for every single time we talk about atheism. I'm saying that the baby step is doubt. The baby step is not reform. Okay, the baby step is making people skeptical about the religion.
Sometimes reform can cause doubt.
Well, yeah, it can, but guess what? Most of the time, because they don't.
Okay,
Sorry, Armin, I didn't hear you. Just finish that sentence.
Most of the time, because they hear the reform arguments and they bring them at the attention to the fact that these verses are shitty, not because they're buying the reform arguments. But anyways.
Okay, I have to interject because I think you are misguided. But anyway, and I'm going to make another radical statement, okay? Every person who is not every Muslim. Let's talk about Islam. I don't want to talk about other religions. Every Muslim who is not an extremist, and by extremist I mean a jihadist or a member of a terrorist group, or is actually following a reformed version of Islam. Okay, what the reformers are asking us to do, what the reformers are asking us to do.
Not following.
Let me finish. Let me finish. The reformers are asking to do is to take it one step further. Okay, every Muslim who say, well, I don't agree with Muhammad marrying. No, I don't agree with Muhammad marrying a 9-year-old with Aisha. They will say, well, it was like women grow up faster in the desert, whatever. That they try to justify that it is not applicable right now. They are following a reformed version of Islam. Okay, that
they're saying to defend
but it is not. It is just what the reformers. What I think Majid is brilliantly doing, and etc., is that they're asking people to acknowledge that there is a problem in Islam that needs to be reformed. But generally speaking, every moderate religious person is following a reformed version of the religion.
Islam.
And those who are
they're cherry picking, Faisal.
Yes,
they're
exactly.
not necessarily.
Which is reform. Cherry picking is also a form of reform.
Actually, yes, they're doing less than cherry picking.
I agree with Faisal on this.
Literalism. Let me finish, Armin, for fuck's sake. Like, you occupied our country for 8 years. Let me talk for a bit.
You interrupted me 5 times. So
every the cherry picking, the fact that Muslims are many of them, thank goodness, are willing to ignore or not subscribe to these literal interpretations of the faith is a sign of reform. So if you're going to talk about numbers, right, which is wonderful what Ali talked about, the 7%, but there's also a bigger percentage of people who are not subscribing to the faith in the literalist way of the word.
That's what I was getting
at all.
Which is, huh?
At all. Okay, these people are not cherry picking. They're They're picking their own values over Islam. They're not cherry picking.
Well,
they're not.
Yeah, sure.
Or a mix of both. Or a
That's
mix
also
of
part
both.
of
They
it,
pick some values from Islam, some values not from Islam.
Let me speak now. These people are not going to the Quran and saying, "Let me see how I fucking live my life." They're already picked their values. Now they're saying like, "Oh, the Quran agrees with my fucking values." These people are not cherry picking the Quran.
All of that is good.
Yeah, I did not say it's not good, but based on what they're doing, you have to look at what they're doing. And
but
then
that is reform.
No, let me speak.
Reform.
That is not. Let me speak. All right, let me speak. So based on what they're doing, you have to see what their approach is. So because they're not getting their morality out of the Quran, then you going and changing the meaning of the Quran does jack shit, because that's not where they. That's not.
How do you know that they did not get that values from the Quran?
People
you want to speak on their behalf? Armin is the speaker of the Muslims right now.
No, because I give Muslims more credit to accept a fucking pedophile and the values of the Quran. I think more people.
What if they don't think? Why do they not think Muhammad as a pedophile? Why are you trying to interject your belief of Islam of what Muslims believe in?
And I'm trying to answer you. May I answer your question?
Yes, you can.
All right. You ask me, why do you think that? I think because the Quran and the Hadith and Muhammad, it was so horrific. Their standards for morality is so low that not just Muslims, the average human being cannot be that low. The average human being today is definitely above that. And I think that these Muslims, when you find good Muslims, the Islam deserves zero credit for that. And because what you guys are doing, and they're saying, well, they're getting these good values from Islam, you're giving credit to this fucking shitty, barbaric, ancient ideology where these people I'm answering you, and where these people deserve the credit for being good themselves. This ideology deserves zero credit for that. And that's what the reform is doing. The reform movement is giving credit to this shitty ideology.
You guys are actually agreeing with each other. So if I can just mention that, let you both know that you're both arguing it at each other and saying the same thing. What you're saying is,
I disagree with this notion.
Please.
Okay. Sorry, Yasmin.
Back to Ali's point that he always says all the time, we cannot reform Islam, we can reform Muslims. You guys are both just saying that, but you're yelling it at each other.
This is a semantics disagreement.
No,
That's
No,
why-
because I don't think there is one Islam. Like he said, like, oh, Islam
You
is a
just
barbaric.
said that any Muslim that doesn't follow it literally.
Exactly. Okay, literal Islam. He didn't
So
say
you're
literal Islam,
talking
he said
about
Islam.
Muslims now.
No,
Islam
he said
doesn't
it's-
change. The literal meaning of the words on the page, I don't care what Majid or Reza Aslan say, the literal meaning of the words on the
Faisal.
page are very clear.
I love you, but
Okay.
she's right.
I love Majid, but I'm sorry. I know how to read Arabic and I can understand when I read
so do I.
something.
So
When
that,
I read an instruction manual, I know how to follow the steps. When I read like the Sam Harris example of you're reading a menu when you go to a restaurant, you know what you're ordering. Of course, the words on the page mean the words on the page. Literal Islam will always be literal Islam. Muslims are a
But it doesn't
different
have to be the
story.
only Islam.
Muslims don't have to follow their religion literally.
but
So
what is even literally? Okay, I'm going to interject. What is even literally the Muslim, the Islam? There is Shia Islam, there is Sunni Islam, there is Sufi Islam, there is Ahmadiyya Islam.
again,
There is no,
again,
nobody
again,
even agrees
again.
on what literally is what Islam
The
literally actually
Quran
means.
is written down. The words are there. Muslims, human beings can decide, I want to be a Shia, I want to be Ahmadi, I want to be a whatever. It
I think
doesn't
the Shia
matter.
Muslims
The
are
Quran is
Muslims,
still the
but
Quran. The
they're-
But
words
it
are
has
still
different
there.
interpretations, different people looking at it. Like it has a different, like the word.
Yes, Faisal, but there's a reason why 90% of the world all interpret it the same way, because that's what the goddamn words
they
say
don't.
on the page.
They don't, because like the thing is like the instructions. I mean, they might seem clear, but at the same time, even with that clarity, there are so many interpretations as a result of it.
Sure. So many
And
interpretations that
guys,
90%
that
of
is that
Muslims all
discussion.
follow the exact
What's
same.
an interpretation for
guys,
beating your wife?
Everybody has made their point. I think now we're going to go around in circles. So let's just
Right.
we've got the Faisal point of view. We've got Armin. We've got
Love you, Yasmin.
I love you too. People are laughing at my story. I gotta
I love all of you guys. Now let's do one more question and then let's wrap this up.
I just want to say
10
one
more
thing.
minutes.
My daughter and I were listening to that Demi Lovato song where she's singing "Sorry, Not Sorry," and we were actually laughing at the way Americans say "sorry," "sorry, not sorry." So we say it properly. Anyway,
Sorry.
yes, I love you too, Faisal. Even though I disagree with you that the words on the page do actually mean the words
And
on
I
the page.
mentioned that
Anyway, la 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 la.
I mentioned that in the previous episode. The 5 pillars of Islam. The 5 pillars of Islam come from the
Let
18th.
him finish. Yeah.
Five
Go on.
pillars of Islam that we now think of as literal Islam or conservative Islam come from the 18th century.
Come from
Mus-
Gabriel. Hadith from Gabriel. Directly.
A direct word of God.
For the moment that Muhammad was born into the 18th century, there was no strict concept of 5 pillars of Islam.
That's the
And
religion
God
now.
bless you and God bless the reformers. Have a good night.
That's because
The
the
Shia 5
5 pillars
pillars
are not
are
in the
different.
Quran. Did I say that? I said the
By
Quran
the
is
way,
written
the
there.
Shia
The
5
Quran is written very
Even with
clearly.
that, the Hadith, the Quran itself by itself is a fucking shitty book.
we
Exactly.
said all of that, Armin. You
Yeah.
said it.
Okay,
Faisal
sorry,
said it.
sorry, Ali. Sorry.
Next question and let's wrap up.
All right, pick a good question.
I love you too, Mass 9510.
Who was Mass 9?
Guys, you
Katie's
guys should
laughing
pick
at my
up
story.
better.
Katie, you're Canadian too.
Yeah.
Sorry.
is-
Yeah, that's
what
right.
is-
She knows.
So should I pick a question?
Yeah, I can't tell anymore because everybody's
What
been.
is like, okay.
Actually, this is a good question. How would you recommend an anti-theist Westerner approach a devout Muslim? Actually, no, that would get into reform versus atheism. We already
Yeah,
talked-
we did. Let's get away from this reform
Something
versus thing.
else.
We've talked about it way too much.
Are you guys into? No, that's also gets us to the.
No wonder the alt-right is growing. It's the glorious Egyptian mustaches. I don't even know what that means. But I
That's
think
not
that
a
the
question.
alt-right is growing because the left is
Okay, let's talk about
quiet.
that.
No. Wait. That's going to be another episode. Right now, let's just get a question that we can finish in 10 minutes. 'cause
Okay.
that's all the time.
Please pick yours. What is yours, Mubin? You should have rewrote it because now I
Okay,
have to
can I ask
scroll
this
up.
question?
If
Can I-
no, let's go from the audience, not from you. If Christians treated the Bible like the Quran, no, that's also reform versus atheism.
Yasmin, full of grace. Oh, Sada, I can't wait to get
Fine.
here.
Mobeen asked a question. I want to find his or her question. What can you put the question again?
It's a mail for it's Mubin.
Dan Gibson, Sacred City.
Mobin says, please pick my question, but so I'm trying to find his question.
Something about Dan Gibson, Sacred City. I don't know what that means. That means nothing to me.
I don't know what you're talking about. Sorry. Oh, Dan Gibson, Sacred City. Sorry, we have no clue what you're talking about. Sorry about that.
So much stuff here.
We'll do research and come back to you. Customs that you guys like. We already. Oh, okay. What is it? Okay, here.
If Christians
anything back from Islam that you like?
Yes.
Yeah, but we talked about that already. We already did.
We said about things that we practice.
I know,
already.
it's too close. We already talked about.
We already talked
zakat.
about.
We like zakat.
No, I don't
Brother
like
Rizvi
zakat.
and Navabi,
Goes to
when can we
government.
expect Bengali and Arabic translations of your books?
Oh, so there is an Arabic translation that is being worked on right now.
Right.
That's coming out in Egypt by small publishers. That's going to be done, and then we're also going to have an ebook of it. Bengali translation, not yet. Someone's already gone and translated into Farsi. It's unofficial, but apparently a good translation. There's already an Indonesian translation for people who want to look it up. I obviously don't recommend it, but and I don't tell anybody that it's out there, but it's somewhere out there on the internet.
Ask something personal.
Some people are conflating liberal and moderate Muslim. I just want to talk about that for 1 second. When we talk about moderate Muslims, those can be Muslims that are still, as Americans would still consider them socially conservative. But when we talk about liberal Muslims, which are a small group, those are people like Majid Nawaz who are actually true liberals. They believe in liberal values, and they're also Muslim at the same time. That's a much smaller group. So be careful with conflating. Some people are calling them liberal moderate Muslims. No, that those are two different groups. A moderate Muslim isn't necessarily liberal. In fact, they're more likely to be socially conservative.
All right, I'm going to use this question, thoughts on Dave Rubin, to just plug the podcast that we're going to be publishing next. So somebody's asking, what's your guys on Dave Rubin? Thomas is asking that. I'm just going to say, watch, I think on Wednesday, we're going to publish that. So that's going to, you're going to have so much, we talk about that there.
Can I interject to this? Because that will be a question that may be related to Dave Rubin that I asked already.
Okay.
Is that how can we prevent our work and our podcast from being scapegoated by alt-rights?
Okay, good.
We've asked that so many times.
Good question. But I think that's what we're going to say, that we're going to do a whole episode on that.
Oh, yeah. We should do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we talked about doing a whole episode on that.
We said, I think, that it doesn't matter. We're going to say what we need to say, and then people can take it.
So there are a lot of questions about what do you think of this person, that person. We try to avoid that in general, like talking about individuals.
Yeah.
There's one good question here. Mubin said that Dan Gibson calculated the Qibla of all the mosques that were built in the 7th century and found out that the Qibla pointed towards Petra and not Mecca. Yes, and in fact, Tom Holland, who is a historian, did similar research, and he had the same results.
Syria.
Yeah, so that's why it says here Petra. And that's why we think that it's a political reason is the reason why it's Saudi Arabia now.
By the way, somebody in the audience, somebody in the chat has sent me some recommendation from people from the alt-right to have on our show.
Oh, thank you.
I think we could have them and challenge them, not like have them to agree with them.
Okay, there's a question for me saying that, Faisal, why do you think radicalism is the benchmark? Should I answer that?
What does that mean?
I don't even know what that means.
The fact that I'm focused on fundamentalism as being the enemy, not the religion. Is that okay for me to answer?
You used to be anti-religion, Faisal. What happened to you?
Well, I got circumcised. Anyway, so why do I think? Okay, so if I answer the question very quickly, so you can have time for more questions. I do after, and that's actually a good question from you, Armin, because I used to have a much more anti-religious phase until I moved out of Iraq.
Yeah, let's end on this. We should all talk about this. Go ahead.
And when I moved out of Iraq, I started living in more. I moved to Malaysia, Southeast Asia around, and then I moved to the United States. And then when the problem started not becoming as you guys know, I live in New York. I've been around America. When the problem started not becoming like religion as much, I started focusing of how can we, what is really important in the world? And I've been focusing more that actually a civil society and having a conversation and us having different beliefs and at least adhering to liberal values and secular values, so to me seems much more important than me being right. I no longer care about being right anymore. I mean, I am an atheist.
So you don't care about the truth.
I'm not an apologetic about it. I think that evolution is a fact. I think that global warming is a fact. I don't think that God exists. I'm all within the same realm as you are and anyone else. But I think that, to me, yes, you said I don't care about the truth. Yes, maybe I care about, there are some things that are more important to me than just being right. Okay, and I know that atheism is right. I think that there's very likelihood that there's no God.
You're being
But I care about like having.
Make a good husband.
I care about safety. I care about national security. I care about people coexisting with each other. This is actually, to me, the most, because I lived in civil wars. I've lived in the authoritarianism. I don't care about being right as much. When people have their beliefs so strong to the way they are ever able to navigate on them, what I really care about is people living together in safety, having their own beliefs, and not necessarily arguing about, oh, whether there is this, whether there is God, things that doesn't necessarily affect daily life basis.
For people to live together, we should tackle ideas that suggest that we can't live with each other.
You guys, we've been talking for 2 hours. I just wanted to mention that.
Let's end this. Let's end this. Okay.
Okay.
Isn't that a redemption
Literalism is
leftism,
the enemy
though?
for me. That's the question I was asked. Okay.
All right.
So Yasmin, end it.
Yasmin, go on and end the final note.
Okay, so let's just end it as a goodbye and answering this final question. How's that?
Good.
Very quickly. What is the one Western stereotype of Muslims or Muslim countries that drives you the most crazy? So for me, the thing that drives me the most crazy is that people assume that Muslim is a culture and Muslim is a people. That drives me crazy. All right, go ahead, Armin. What drives you crazy?
What drives me crazy? I think just thinking that everybody is the same there. I don't know. I mean, and just thinking like, oh, Islamic country. Actually, this is what drives me the crazy. Thinking that these countries are too religious to have hope for atheism in there, right? And thinking like these people are beyond hope. Like the only thing we could hope for is this harmless reform thing, like, oh, you guys are too stupid to be atheists, just don't bomb us, right? That's all you can offer. And thinking like atheism is impossible in these countries, and that drives me nuts, because I've noticed it's actually not the way. That's not true.
Agreed. What about you, Faisal or Ali?
Well, I mean, one of the craziest questions I've got, I think I was in California. I don't know, either San Diego or Los Angeles, but somebody asked me, do you guys have cars in Iraq? I was like, oh my fucking God. And they're like, oh, do you ride camels? I'm like, no, I do not. I mean, yes, we have camels in Iraq, but they're like 100 miles away from my house. Like I live in, I come from Baghdad as a city. We don't have camels running around in the city that you ride over. So I think it's like, maybe this, like, and I wouldn't be surprised if this stereotype about Iraq or maybe Arab culture can be applied to every other Muslim, quote unquote.
I mean, Faisal, Canada is like connected, same landmass as America, and they don't know anything about us. They ask me, a Canadian, like, do you guys have igloos up there? So they're not going to know anything about the Middle East.
Yeah, so that's probably a stereotype that it's not that I dislike. I mean, I like camels. I think they're fine. They're actually very nice looking, and they're very good to ride.
All of us here at Secular Jihadists approve of camels.
Yeah.
I haven't seen one
wonderful
yet.
mammals.
I've ridden one. They're fun. Anyway, Ali, what drives you crazy?
Ali, yeah, go ahead.
What drives me crazy is the conflation of this idea that if somebody is a Muslim, or if somebody, even like a lot of the Muslims that I knew growing up, both in Pakistan and even Saudi Arabia and here, were just people who were just born in Muslim families. They had no idea what the faith was about. They stuck to some elements of it. They would defend it. They were annoying at times. But just this idea that anybody who says I'm Muslim believes in every single thing that the Quran says, and they're knowledgeable about it, and they stick to all of those things, and they're kind of 80% aligned with bin Laden. That actually drives me nuts, because it's just patently false. So when again, when liberals and leftists, when they say you're criticizing Islam, you're a bigot against all Muslims, or on the right, when they say, well, this person says he's Muslim, so that means he must believe in all the same stuff bin Laden does. Those conflations between the ideology, the religion, and all the people who call them Muslims, who are extremely heterogeneous. That conflation drives me nuts.
Yep.
We're good?
All right, guys. Start
Thank you for the
Googling.
great questions, everybody who were in the live chat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you guys are awesome. Thank you so much.
And remember,
And
tweet us.
I agree with you,
hashtag
Osman. It drives me crazy that they think everybody in the Middle East has one culture, speaks one language.
Thank you, Osman.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Okay.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for watching us for 2 hours and a bit.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
guys.
All right.
Have a good night, people.